Body to the finale, the series finale of PEW featuring Dark Side of the Ring. We are watching today the episode about the Montreal Screwjob, one of the most notorious moments in wrestling history. I saved one of the best for last with this series, and we're definitely going to enjoy that as well. We have quite the similar story playing out in our arc here. No one has ever seen Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels in a wrestling ring to this point. I've been very careful to protect that. What I wasn't very careful about was hitting the correct button when I started streaming today. So what I did was ran this entire show and simulated up to the pay-per-view, released a guy. Nothing else really happened, but ran this entire show before I realized I wasn't actually streaming. But since I did realize I was not streaming, we do have a finale here today, and we're gonna love it. Undertaker defeated Steamboat in a 99 for our main event the other day there. But yeah, it would be the finale of all things that I screw up on. It might not be the exactly final episode. I am thinking about doing like a reunion show kind of a thing, like where we all gather around and maybe watch the steroids trial episode while I drug test all of my workers. And I mean, it's the 90s, so we're gonna find some stuff. So that could be fun too. And maybe I won't mess up on starting it. But yeah, pretty good show that I had without you guys. It was in '96, and Shawn and Bret got into a little argument. Both of them being champions. So Bret here is holding the AWA World Heavyweight Championship belt, a belt that, despite being in the AWA for a little while before I hired him, and actually working there at the same time, a belt that Shawn has never held. Now, Bret was making fun of Taker, or I believe it was Kerry Von Erich at the time, for having not held it. But yeah, Shawn has not held it either, and Shawn was in that company. Shawn does hold the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Southern Heavyweight title that has been, for a while now, pretty much synonymous and carried at the same time as the Smoky Mountain Wrestling World Heavyweight Championship. For a while now, I mean, since we got it from the NWA. It was apparently either the UWF's or the AWA. I think it was the AWA's belt. So around the same time we got the AWA World Heavyweight, we got the Smoky Mountain Southern. But the Smoky Mountain World Heavyweight as well. So yeah, Shawn's got quite a few defenses under his belt, of his belts. And so does Bret. I mean, they both have been reigning champions for over 100 days each. Shawn's both reigns have been over 150. But yeah, so definitely a pretty big deal. So for our pre-booking, which I definitely didn't mess up and put for the wrong day and then have to move, we have Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. It's gonna be crazy, and there will be titles unified, and thank God, because we need some titles to be unified up in here. Got way too many world titles, but finally Bret and Shawn are going to face off, and we will see the unification of some belts. Then we have Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage, which strangely enough has never happened. They've never faced off in a ring before. And also Undertaker Sting. So a veritable who's who of fantasy matches here tonight. And that's what you're getting with this finale. We're going to have a little bit more time since I already basically advanced up to the event, so let's just jump right into it. Let me hop over here.
Good job. Bret was amazing. By any standard, Bret may go down as one of the top technicians in the industry.
Bret took the business seriously. I think sometimes to his detriment, he took himself a little too seriously.
Bret believed he was the WWF champion.
On November the 9th, 1997, professional wrestler Bret Hart had fought and clawed his way to the top as world champion. But in a matter of seconds, he would realize that those who make you can just as easily destroy you.
Here's the problem. Bret didn't want to lose the championship. It's your last night in the company. We need to crown a new champion. You know what? We'll just take it from him.
It's like I remember when I was a kid exactly where I was standing when John F. Kennedy had been assassinated. And I remember just as precisely where I was when I found out about the Montreal Screwjob. Screwing a Canadian hero in Canada? How much more evil can one get?
And I still feel to this day like I have a neon sign on my fucking head. I fucked you, Bret. Never told you about it, but I fucked you.
I was so mad, like it just ready to explode. The Screwjob changed so many things in the business. The innocence of wrestling changed.
This was one of the worst things in the world that happened to me in this business.
Say what you want about wrestling. That was real. He really screwed that guy. The incident known as the Montreal Screwjob marks a turning point in the history of wrestling. Never before had the curtain been pulled back to fully reveal the behind-the-scenes drama. A dark plot of betrayal was exposed. Legacies were redefined, and fans would never see wrestling the same again.
You know, it's one thing I always say about the Screwjob is that if you go back and you look at all the facts, my story's never changed. It's always been the same story right from day one because I tell the truth. I'm Bret the Hitman Hart, the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. I always said I was a real world champion because I really traveled all around the world and defended my belt. This is my history in my life here, all these guys. Despite everything that's happened with the Screwjobs and all that kind of stuff, for me it's mostly happy memories.
My name's Jim Cornette. For the past 35 years, I've worked for every major professional wrestling promotion in the United States as a manager, announcer, trainer, matchmaker, pretty much done it all.
I was actually there. I actually lived it. I'm giving you my perspective. It's just because my perspective happens to be entertaining that some people take exception to that. I was the executive vice president of talent relations. I've been a writer, producer, director. Brother Love is an alter ego of mine. You name it, worn a lot of hats in the WWF, WWE. The patriarch of the Hart family was Stu Hart. And Stu was an age-old veteran, double tough. The dungeon was the basement in the Hart family house.
Well, the dungeon is hard to explain. My dad, 60 or 70-year-old man, we go down there and torture a bunch of football.
So we got to this point a little bit earlier than I expected, but spoiler alert, over here in the Montreal Screwjob episode, Shawn is supposed to become the next champion. Bret will say that he goes to Shawn, and you know, he says, like, I know you'd do the same thing for me, or something along those lines. And, or, you know, wouldn't you do the same thing for me? Shawn says, no, I would not do the same thing for you. I would not do the job for you. So then Bret later on down the line in Montreal says, I won't do the job for you. Like, no. Now in this scenario, Shawn will be doing the job for Bret. Kind of proving the opposite, that, you know, under my booking, under my tutelage, you know, my excellence, I can get Shawn to job. But no, but yeah, you know, just, I mean, it is Bret's time. But also, yeah, like that. On most Dark Side of the Rings, I'm trying to avoid the guys like overdosing or, killing their wives. But in this one, I'm just trying to avoid them getting into a backstage altercation, which is probably pretty likely. Now, I could go in and add a Screwjob in. Like, we could screw Shawn, but he doesn't even mind. There's no real reason for it. The match is going to be an epic. We're going to have a long match here. But nothing they haven't done before. Well, nothing they've ever done. They've never done anything before in this universe. But, in our universe, they had quite a long match. Some Iron Man matches. But yeah, basically I just want to talk about that match a little bit. Since it is our main event, our finale here. We might go an episode or a couple episodes of the show after, just due to the fact that we started a little bit, started the show back there a little bit late. But yeah, cool.
Football players and bodybuilders. I don't feel my arms, sir.
Let me show you a hold here. You just take your arm like this. Like you just ease his hand.
The Hart family is one of the most famous families in the history of our business. The sons were all wrestlers. The daughters all married wrestlers. They had a wrestling bear that lived under their porch. It was like the Munsters house for the people in Calgary. Stu would invite everybody over and make breakfast. They had a bunch of cats, and he'd take the thing where he's flipping the eggs, and he'd flip the cat shit over there, and then go back to flipping the eggs, Made him tough's what it did.
And Stu began the Stampede Wrestling promotion in Alberta and had a very successful company there for a long time.
Hello, and welcome to this another edition.
And Bret Hart was kind of a pale, skinny, maybe 21-year-old kid or whatever. But you could tell he kind of knew what he was doing.
And I'm more confident right now than I've ever been. And there's no reason right now that him and me shouldn't have those belts right now.
The Harts were very integral to professional wrestling around the world.
In 1984, Stu Hart is trying to keep his struggling territory afloat. The rapidly expanding WWF strikes a deal to acquire the entire promotion, along with Stu's main star, his son Bret.
When Vince bought Stu Hart Stampede Wrestling in 1984, he took Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart, who was his son-in-law, as a team. The Hart Foundation, they were managed by Jimmy Hart, no relation.
They were a tremendous tag team. And Bret Hart had a perfect foil in Shawn Michaels.
When you have two guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels that are as talented as they are at what they do to begin with, and then sometimes there's just chemistry. You find a duet between two singers that have never worked together before, but suddenly it's a hit.
Look at this.
360 in midair.
Internationally, we're getting reports back that we've got a megastar on our hands in the form of Bret Hart. His work had made him this megastar. That was all they wanted to see. That's all they wanted to talk about. At the same time, Ric Flair was the champion, and Rick was having some health issues. We needed to make a change. So Vince is looking at it and going, why not Bret? That's the kind of guy you want to reward.
Vince McMahon's one of the most unique individuals on the planet. If you could cross a genius with P.T. Barnum and Donald Trump, you would get the love child that would be Vince McMahon. Vince, honestly, is a third-generation wrestling promoter. Vince controls creative. Vince controls the talent choices. They run the lunch schedule past Vince McMahon to this day.
Over the years, Vince had a good relationship with Bret.
Not to this
I don't
day.
know. I think that once Bret became champion in Saskatoon, there was a change that was taking place.
The criteria for a world champion in those days, there wasn't a set physical list of maneuvers or whatever that you had to perform. It was whoever Vince thought could be the guy.
Vince McMahon decides who the champion is going to be. It's not actually won by anybody. So Bret didn't beat Ric Flair. He won the championship in a scripted contest, okay, in a storyline. Bret deserved, to have that accolade. But at the same time, remember that someone made you champion. You didn't really beat anybody.
I think Bret looked at the WWF Championship like guys
years ago used to. Maybe it was because of his father and his lineage, but when you were chosen to be a champion of a major company, it meant that the promoter thought that you were the best talent, that you were the best draw, that you would make him the most money, that you were the guy.
While Bret's star is rising in the WWF, a fledgling promotion suddenly starts edging out Vince McMahon and the television ratings.
WCW in the early 90s was a secondary competitor to the WWF.
I happened to be Eric Bischoff. You know, as the executive producer, at least I had a voice within WCW. WWF is up here. WCW is way down here. There's no way I can be better than the WWF, but I gotta be different than them. Their tape, I'm live. They target their content towards kids. I decided I wanted my characters to be more reality-based. I would use their real names.
WCW came after our talent. The perception was they offered them a lot more money. You know, when Hulk Hogan left the WWF, I think it hurt Vince personally. It stung a little bit. And the first big names to go were Scott Hall, Kevin Nash in the very beginning. Ted DiBiase left. Roddy Piper shortly thereafter.
The curtain call, as it came to be known, happened because Nash and Hall were leaving to go to WCW for their big contracts.
It is my last appearance for the WWE, and it's also Kevin Nash's last appearance.
It was at Madison Square Garden, the most famous arena in the world. After the last match, Hall and Nash and Michaels and Helmsley, two of them good guys, two of them bad guys, all went out to the ring and had a big hug and a big kiss and waved bye to the fans, who had no idea what was going on with Shawn and those guys. They broke kayfabe in front of the fans in Madison Square Garden. The word kayfabe is like a lot of wrestling terminology. It comes from the days of the carnivals. When you break kayfabe in wrestling, you let the fans and the general public in the inside world and ruin the illusion.
It wasn't like that. It all just happened organically because the fans were going crazy. I mean, it was like a magical moment. Here we are 25 years later talking about it.
You had been chosen and selected to be in a secret brotherhood, and you kept those illusions private and to yourself because it was a code. It was the code of kayfabe.
Now as competition between the two biggest promotions heats up, wrestling's fourth wall starts to crumble, exposing its secrets. And while Bret enters the biggest rivalry of his career, he never could have imagined that it would end up leading to his ultimate destruction. Before their off-screen feud would boil over into one of wrestling's most controversial moments, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels' contrasting in-ring styles led to some of the greatest matches of all time.
As far as wrestling styles between Bret and Shawn, Bret was more basic, more grounded, more hard-hitting, more technical.
Michaels from the other side and
Michaels, he's an incredible performer, but also a lot of his stuff is more pretty and a little bit more gymnastic.
Oh, he's caught by Bret Hart. Oh, look at that. Oh!
I think Shawn Michaels is probably the greatest performer all round. Plus, he was different. He wasn't a big giant.
My contract was going to expire. Eric Bischoff has sent feelers out to me. There were two separate occasions when I began to talk to Bret about coming over.
And I heard the initial offer was $2 million, and then it was $2 million something, and it got up to like $3 million. And I'm sure they were rounding off, but at that point, what's the difference, right?
Vince heard about them giving me an offer. And I remember Vince said, he goes, I'll make you an offer. And we worked out a contract. It was $1.5 million for 20 years, I think.
Bret favors loyalty over money and accepts the counteroffer from Vince McMahon. But then a mutual animosity between Bret and Shawn begins to take hold.
Shawn was starting to get overwhelmed with negative. Doing a Chip and Dale kind of gimmick is not a heroic thing to do.
Shawn Michaels saw an opportunity to be more and more of a top guy and also to be more and more of a prick.
Nobody breaks into this wrestling business to work their way to the middle. I mean, if you don't want to be on top, you're in the wrong business. I don't really care if you want to have dinner with me. Do you want to wrestle me? Oh, you do? Okay.
I don't think that they were really that different, which is probably where the real-life rivalry came into play.
First day, when I walked out and I ended up trashing Shawn Michaels on the interview about his Playgirl magazine centerfold. Before I went out, I said, Shawn, is it okay if I bring up that Playgirl magazine and take a jab at that and say something about it? He goes, no, go ahead, say whatever you want.
World Wrestling Federation needs a hero. They need a role model. They need somebody they can look up to, not somebody that poses for girly magazines.
And I came back, and Shawn was just crushed. He almost looked like he burst into tears.
Now we're doing live TV, and these guys are saying things on live TV about each other.
Shawn made reference to Sunny Days. Sunny is Tammy Sitch. She was one of the valets. She was the first real, big pinup girl of the WWF. And Shawn was making the inference that Bret was having some kind of an affair or some kind of relationship with Sunny.
Even though lately you've had some sunny days, my friend, you still can't get the job done in any situation. Oh boy. Now, from a fan's point of view, it's getting exciting. But if you're the other guy, you're hating the dude who's talking about you. Because now you got to call home and explain that to your wife.
You don't mess with a guy's wife or his family, or else you can find yourself laying in a ditch somewhere. So we're in Hartford, Connecticut one night at the Hartford Civic Center. And all of a sudden the door busts open and in comes the Brooklyn Brawler. And he says, hey, Vince, Shawn and Bret have just gotten a fight in the bathroom.
Shawn finally comes into my dressing room. We haven't talked for about a couple months. And I just remember I was just trying to be nice. I almost forgot that we ever had issues. And I said, hey, Shawn, I was brushing my hair. And he goes, you think I'm going to fucking talk to you?
And whatever it was, Bret just leg dived him and took him down right there.
So I grabbed him by the hair and swung him around the dressing room. I think his feet were actually off the ground a couple of times. I think it was like two prostitutes fighting downtown or something.
Here comes Shawn, and he's hot. And he has got in his hand a handful of his hair. It looked like a small possum. And I'll never forget this. He says, this is an unsafe working environment.
As far as I know, I think if anybody was sleeping with Sonny, it probably was Shawn.
Yeah, he was. Facts.
As the backstage friction between Bret and Shawn intensifies, Vince begins to lose the TV ratings war and is forced to cut costs.
Vince comes back and looks at the commitment that he had made to Bret Hart, and it was a drain. It was a drain on the company for what we were bringing in at the time.
Vince told me that basically he couldn't afford to pay me the contract that he'd given me. It kind of broke my heart, where it's like, okay, I get it. I remember I got off the phone from him and I said, I guess I'm done. I hung up with Vince and I signed my WCW contract.
I can't remember exactly what day or when I heard that Bret had made the deal and was going to WCW, but Vince told us Bret was going to finish up at Survivor Series. He'd drop the belt and then he'd be free. It didn't turn out that way.
With Bret leaving the company, Bret wasn't just leaving the company. He was leaving the company and going to our competitor that was beating us in the ratings. To have our champion leave the company is bad enough. To have them leave the company with the championship is a kick in the nuts.
The time-honored tradition is when you're leaving a territory or a promotion, you lose on the way out.
I got to tell you, in the beginning, there wasn't a whole lot of worry about it because it was Bret. And we thought that there would not be any issue with Bret dropping the championship to whoever we asked him to drop the championship to.
When I first heard that I was wrestling Shawn was maybe about 3 or 4 weeks before Survivor Series. Anyway, so Vince pulled me, he's all excited, he goes, we're going to drop the belt to Shawn. So when I saw Shawn, I thought this is your chance to open the door for sort of dialogue. So I remember when we shook hands, I said, Shawn, I just heard that we're wrestling at Survivor Series. I said, I want you to know that you'll always be safe with me in the ring, that I'll always be professional. I would never do anything to hurt you or injure you or anything like that. And he looked at me and he said, I appreciate that, but I just want you to know that I am not willing to do the same thing for you. And he turned around and walked out of the dressing room and slammed the door.
Vince, even though he knew that Shawn and Bret hated each other, somehow he thought this match was magically going to go in the ring and everything was going to work out like he wanted. And the closer that we got to the match, the more obvious it was that it was not. One of the things he'd given Bret in that brand new contract with all the bells and whistles was reasonable creative control of his character and the way he was presented.
I'm the boss of my last 60 days. Why would I lose to Shawn? He's disrespected me. I'm not wrestling Shawn, or I'm not putting Shawn over under any circumstances until he proves me that he's got enough respect for me to put me over first.
And I was on Bret's side, because Shawn was the prick, not Bret, but we had to get the belt back.
The news of Vince's current champion signing with his main competitor would spell his defeat in the ratings war. With his back to the wall, Vince must get his belt off Bret, and what he's about to do will echo far beyond the wrestling world. With his last match in the WWF less than 24 hours away, Bret Hart is refusing any scenario which has him losing the belt to his real-life nemesis, Shawn Michaels. Bret is growing suspicious of what his boss, Vince McMahon, might do.
Showed up that day and I was ready for my match. But I did have suspicions about the referee. I remember thinking the only way they can screw me is Shawn will never pin me or make me tap out. So I wasn't worried about that. I said, the way it'll work is they'll get the referee.
Hello, I'm Earl Hebner. I'm a referee. My relationship with Bret was great. Most of the time, he always wanted me to ref his matches. People think, oh, I can count to 3 and it's over. That's not the ball game. We're sort of a coach. You're thinking for 3 people. It's very, very hard.
Okay, so let's get into the Montreal story.
Do we have to? Just kidding. The day before that show, I got on a plane, got in my seat. The stewardess came back and said, Mr. Hebner, I said, yes, ma'am. She said, you have a first-class seat. I said, my ticket don't say first class. She said, Mr. Hart bought you a first-class seat. So I went on up and sat beside Bret, and we talked, and Bret said, will you promise me one thing? I said, what's that? He said, you won't count me out? I said, nope, I will not count you out.
I said, you know they're going to ask you to screw me tomorrow. But he got the tears in his eyes, and he got his lip quivering, and he was like, the hell with that, I swear to God on my kids, I would never, and he was so adamant. And I shook his hand, and I said, just tell me if something like that's going to happen.
Complicating matters. A film crew producing a documentary called Wrestling with Shadows is following Bret to capture his last WWF match.
From the second I landed, I got the entire High Roads production film crew. They're filming, and they got the boom mics and the whole thing, and they followed me where I went.
It was like a lot of people that I didn't even know all around the building.
The idea was that Vince would get with Bret. I think that Vince felt that once he got in front of Bret face to face, that they would work something out.
But I remember the whole camera crew come in, like they wanted to mic me up, and I go, nah, I kind of don't. It's not how I operate. He goes, just in case.
My name is Harry Zufrani. I was the sound recordist on Wrestling with Shadows. The director told us, look, we gotta be very low profile about this. Nobody should know that Bret Hart is wired.
It was a private meeting, and Bret went in wired. Didn't let Vince know that he was recording it.
I never ever want to leave here with any kind of bad feeling. But this week has been a bad week for me. I feel kind of betrayed a little bit. The way this whole thing has been depicted, it's really hard for me as a hero here to come up short.
I was determined to stick to my guns, and that I was not backing down. And right away, Vince goes, well, what are we going to do?
I think what I'd like to do is get through today. I think tomorrow I should just go in and do my speech and forfeit the title. I think it allows me a chance to leave with my head up and leave in a nice way.
I would think it'd be a run-in type thing. But,
yeah.
But I'm open to I'm open to anything. Going into this match, you knew what was going to happen.
I knew that there was a point in the match where Bulldog and Owen would run out, referee would lose control of the match, ring the bell, there would be no winner, and we would go off with a lot of chaos going on in the ring.
So the match would end in like a disqualification?
Yeah, like basically a no contest.
Like I remember walking out to the ring, and I knew, like, okay, be leery of submission.
This whole card's amazing.
But I already talked to Earl, and I thought about it, and it's like, I said, okay. I trusted Earl, and so I put my guard down. That was my fatal mistake.
I'm walking down to go to the ring, and I'm getting pulled aside. And Jerry Briscoe says, Vince McMahon wants you to ring the bell when he puts Bret in the sharpshooter. I said, what? He said, well, are you going to do it? I said, I don't know.
Jerry Briscoe is a producer agent, one of the toughest sumbitches on the face of the earth.
He grabs me by the arm. He says, is Bret Hart going to pay you? This is what Vince wants. Do you want a job or not? I said, I don't have an idea of what I'm going to do right now. Y'all messed my mind up. And this is the truth. I'm thinking he had opportunity to drop the belt. I know this is not right, but I got to have a job. I told my brother to put all my shit in the car. This ain't gonna look good, get all my shit out the dresser and put it in the car. So I'm walking to the ring. God, I promised Bret I wouldn't count him out. That was the longest walk of my life.
We had a great match planned out, and Shawn was a great wrestler. We're gonna start fighting before the bell starts.
I don't think this match has officially even started.
Finally, after about 10 minutes of brawling out and fighting out in the crowd and stuff, I eventually fight Shawn back to the ring, throw him in the ring, and now the match starts.
I get in the ring, I ring the bell to start, and I'm going, God, don't put the sharpshooter on. The match lasts 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, putting Bret in the sharpshooter.
Oh my gosh, how humiliating. He's gonna beat him with his own finish. Shawn actually didn't know how to put the sharpshooter on. He steps through the wrong way, folds my legs the wrong way, and I moved my legs and switched them the right way. I remember when he put it on, I flipped over, I could see Vince McMahon, and I could see him get this cold look on his face, and he's yelling out to ring the fucking bell. Ring the bell. And he kept saying it to the guy, ring the bell.
As the match was going on, I'm going, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I hated it.
And I remember in that moment of looking at the timekeeper, and Vince snaps at him, ring the fucking bell. Oh, they're screwing me right now. And I remember reaching back and showing that I wasn't submitting, and I grabbed Shawn's thing and started to reverse, but you could hear the bell bing, bing, bing.
If I had to ring the bell, Vince McMahon was gonna ring that bell.
And at first I was like, I wanted to just kill Vince. I wanted to just jump through the ropes and just punch him out. I couldn't believe he did it to me after all the years that I gave him. All the matches and all the hard work, and he disrespected me like that. He was son of a bitch. I jumped out of the ring, ran across the floor, jumped the hockey fence, and could still hear the bell ringing.
In front of the
jumped in the
cameras.
car, and we drove off.
I had enough sense to paint WCW backwards so that you could read it on TV.
Bret did the WCW for the fans there in Montreal, but it was what it was.
I remember I had a nice good gobber spit, and I remember I just leaned over the top rope.
Hollywood couldn't recreate something better than that.
I wrecked a bunch of monitors and threw $100,000 headphones out into the crowd and stuff.
Because of a couple of guys that couldn't get along, they hit on the most talked about match ending in the history of professional wrestling since the dawn of time.
Widely viewed by fans as wrestling's most treacherous act, the Montreal Screwjob would tear the lid off of wrestling's sacred brotherhood. But its true architect has yet to be revealed.
This is where I've told a couple of these things. I've never gone this far, but I figured, like I said, I'm not going to talk about this on TV anytime in the rest of my life, so I guess at this point I don't care who gets mad at me. So it was me and Vince Russo at Vince McMahon's house.
My name is Vince Russo. I was the head writer at the WWE during the infamous Montreal Screwjob. And quite honestly,
Shawn Michaels, you're a good example.
I wasn't even originally
job.
slated for this documentary. And then I wanted to be a part of it because I was there. Like, I knew what would happen.
So I'm sitting there
That
that
was
day.
risky.
First, Vince gets up and he takes a phone call from Bret.
What I could tell you about that phone call is, Vince pitched many different scenarios for Shawn Michaels to take the belt off of Bret Hart. And Bret soured on every single one of them. Vince told Bret we'd go back to the drawing board, and that's exactly what we did.
Well, this finish won't work, and that finish won't work, and Bret just wants to come out and hand the belt over on TV the following night without getting beat. I'm sure he does. So then he goes and he calls Shawn. Every time Vince goes in there, then I sit in a room twiddling my thumbs with the fucking guy that I hate worse than anybody in the world, Vince Russo.
We'd get in these creative meetings, and the three of us would argue. And it wasn't the three of us, it was Jim and me.
We could not be farther apart physically, philosophically, mentally, morally. If one of us was an African-American lesbian nun and the other was a Nazi skinhead Martian from outer space, we could not be more different.
The problem is, he's still living in 1970. I'll never forget he made the comment, when a guy comes out of a box, he's instantly over. Like, bro, this is like 1996. Like, who's coming out of boxes, bro?
Vince Russo's never had any respect for professional wrestling. He booked the wrestling program to pattern after Jerry Springer.
Our styles completely crash.
Finally, Vince comes out, and I'm about lost my religion with the whole creative team thing anyway, because it's not my style of wrestling. I'm living in Connecticut. I'm miserable. I weigh 280 pounds because I'm aggravation eating. I'm not in my element here. I said, Vince, there's got to be something we can do. I said, it's your company and it's your belt. So then Vince looks at me and says, Well, then how would you do it, pal? Well, now it's a fucking challenge. Once again, I'm going through every finish I can think of, or every situation I can ever think of where nobody wanted to do a job. I said, goddamn, double crossing. You can learn more about modern wrestling from these classic books and classic magazines than you can by talking to people today, because history always repeats itself. In 1931, there was another double cross in Montreal. The Battle of the Bite. Strangler Lewis controlled the championship and nobody could get it away from it because it was worth so much money. Lewis has a title match in Montreal against Henry Deglaine. They lock up and immediately Deglaine grabs Lewis's own hold on Lewis, the headlock, and takes him down, and they go down on the mat because Lewis is working with him, and probably they're going to do some kind of reversal. Deglaine starts screaming bloody murder at the top of his lungs. The referee checks Deglaine. Huge bite mark on the guy's chest. Apparently, when Deglaine got the headlock on Lewis, Lewis had bitten him. Here's the thing. It was actually Dan Koloff. Deglaine's cornerman had bitten him in the locker room and then did this, and then when they locked up, boom, headlock, nobody can see what happened. Referee disqualifies Strangler Lewis and awards the title to Henry Deglaine. That's a double cross, and it's as old as the hills in wrestling. So when Vince says, well, how would you do it then? Bret's hold is the sharpshooter. But let Shawn get Bret's hold on him. If the referee just calls for the bell as a submission, nobody can tell anything was wrong because that's what it's supposed to look like anyway. And to tell anybody anything was wrong, I said, Bret Hart, of all people, would have to expose the business. I said, what's he going to do? Call the newspapers? But then Vince, and he gave that humph like he does whenever you would be discussing tomfoolery, and he would say, all right, let's get back to reality. And we went on.
Do you recall during that meeting with Vince and Cornette, Cornette ever told a history lesson about double crosses that had happened in the past?
Unless I was in the bathroom during that scenario did not take place in front of me when I was sitting at the table. I'm not going to call Jim Cornette a liar. And when I was sitting at the table and Cornette was sitting at the same table, I pitched that exact scenario to Vince. So basically, out of pure frustration, I said, Vince, screw it, Vince. Have Shawn put the sharpshooter on Bret and have the referee call for the bell. Do that.
Vince Russo didn't know what a double cross was. He was sitting there with his eyes open.
People tell me all the time, oh, Vince, you take credit for the Montreal Screwjob. I wish I didn't pitch the idea. That was a miserable night. It was one of the worst experiences in my life in the wrestling business.
I swear on my mother's grave, my father's grave, my wife's life, and my dog's life, the story I just told you is true. Vince Russo is the biggest liar in professional wrestling. Imagine the territory that takes in.
Hey, welcome.
When I was sitting there at the monitor, I saw him go to the spot. That's when I shit myself.
Playing a little TW.
Holy fuck, he's actually gonna do this. And look to this, look right now. Close up on the goosebumps. Now I'm thinking, I don't know who else knows about this. I just know that there is a high probability that somebody in this building is going to want to beat the shit out of me in the next 10 minutes. And I'm going to get out of here. When I'm starting my car up and starting to pull out, I heard a car rev the motor and saw the headlights pop up behind me. That had to be Hebner.
What's up?
I beat him out of the building.
Jim Cornette and the referee flee the building.
Just as Bret Hart was double-crossed on live television by his boss, Vince McMahon, WWF executive Bruce Pritchard is blindsided himself by the sudden change in plans.
So it's chaos. I'm not even realizing what's happening in front of me.
How did you feel about not being involved in?
Oh God, I was pissed off that I wasn't smart enough as to what they were doing. And I was pissed off because I was left in the back, alone, in a position where everyone thought they knew that I was involved. And I wasn't. I felt very alone. I felt betrayed.
The piece of shit locked himself in his office.
Cameras were off. Show's over. I got screwed. And I was so mad. And there's Shawn suddenly in my dressing room. And he's swearing to God that he had nothing to do with it.
Shawn, you were in on that?
My hands are clean this one, swear to God.
Swear to God.
Actor.
But one of the two was in on it, that I think.
Shawn had to be in on it.
You know, at that time, I had no idea. Well, now we know Shawn was
Two
put in on that.
jobs. Two jobs to Bret tonight.
There was like this hush in the dressing room. Everyone's kind of stunned. I remember Undertaker got so mad that he kicked over one of those big steel barrels. He just slammed the door.
The most people I've had in a CW stream in a minute, y'all. What's
Vince's
up?
office to get a straight answer on why they did that to me.
You know, Vince, you gotta go
We're on our
over
way
and
to
talk him. Explain
affiliate.
why you did what you did. You gotta give him one. And by giving him one, if he's gonna hit you, you gotta take one. Bret came out of the shower
Doing good. How
and
about
told
you?
Vince get out of his fucking dressing room. And then he said, if you're still here when I get out, I'm gonna get dressed. I'm gonna punch you out. Bret finished the shower. I mean, he went back in, took his suit out his time, and finished the shower. And Vince stood right in the middle of the room waiting for him to finish.
So I finish showering, I come out, and it's funny because I walk out of the shower sopping wet, naked. Vince said something to me along the lines of, "This is the first time I ever had to lie to one of my talent," which is such a lie. I remember tying my shoes, and I remember when I got tying my last shoelace, I started to tie it, and I go, "This is it. I'm gonna punch out Vince McMahon. I can't believe I'm doing this." We walk towards each other, end up tying up, just like a pro wrestling match. And I remember just sinking down and kind of just turning my whole body and thinking 14 years and coming up right between our arms. And I hit Vince McMahon with the most beautiful Mike Tyson uppercut. I popped him literally right off the ground. He went straight down, out cold. Everybody was stunned. No one could believe it.
It was dead silent for a while. And nobody said anything, and then Bret said, "Get the fuck out of my dressing room."
I mean, I have to say, I remember Shawn Michaels, he was bawling his eyes out like a baby. And I remember thinking, I know you were in on it. And he knew it. He was like waiting for me to make my way over to him and finish him off. And I remember I just tapped him on the shoulder and I said, "Shawn, thanks for the match." Or he couldn't believe that I thanked him for the match. And then he looked up at me and he just burst into tears, like really blubbering, like,
I had never to that point heard of that much drama and backstage just bullshit.
Sometimes I lost sleep over what I should have done that day.
Bret, you're not going to understand this now, but Vince was trying to protect his business. It was never about not trusting you. He didn't trust Eric.
I went in Vince's office and said, "I need to talk to you." He said, "Okay." I said, "I'm fucked." He said, "I got a meeting with everybody today. We'll take care of it." Set everybody down and said, "What I did last night was my call. It's not Earl's fault, and anybody don't like it can come to my office and I'll release your ass right now." The Screwjob was already in the makings. They had to find somebody that would do it.
The conversation I had with Vince where we really had the big heart-to-heart was the following Wednesday in Stamford. And I told him what I thought. Vince's reaction to it was, if you had known, then you would have known. You would never be able to say that you didn't know. Shawn Michaels risked everything for you and for this company. So before you condemn Shawn Michaels, understand what he did for you and your family. There were a lot of what-if scenarios discussed the night before. And I think that everybody believed that at the end of the day, Vince was going to be able to convince Bret to drop the championship. That didn't happen. So Vince asked Jerry Briscoe to let Shawn know there was a spot in the match that Shawn would get him in the sharpshooter.
I remember you,
bell.
Rebecca. I remember you.
Of all people, Bret Hart, who was raised in the wrestling business, whose father was a wrestler, who went through the code, he's the one that exposed the business.
We're talking with Bret Hart, the Hitman, today. How are you?
It was very important to me after 14 years of probably the most dedicated, loyal, hardworking service that you could ever get out of a professional wrestler. I'd given this man everything you could ever ask for, and I made it very, very clear that my character was not in any way, shape, or form going to be humiliated.
Bret was telling any and everybody that he could. He didn't lose. He was screwed, and it was something that Vince felt it was important to address on Monday Night Raw.
Did you or did you not screw Bret Hart?
There's a time-honored tradition in the wrestling business. When someone is leaving, that they show the right amount of respect.
And the people like, no, we don't want to like the rich billionaire boss. We liked Bret Hart. He was our hero.
Bret Hart didn't want to honor that tradition.
Vince was really giving Bret Hart all kinds of shit for not honoring the time-honored tradition of doing the right thing on the way out on TV. This didn't happen ever before.
Vince in this interview just came across very
cold, calculated, and very, very heelish.
Oh, yeah.
I truly believe that Bret Hart screwed Bret Hart. And you can look in the mirror and know that.
Rather than sweep this incident under the rug, Vince capitalizes on it by transforming this real-life incident into a storyline where he reinvents himself as an evil, conniving mastermind.
When I debuted, the fans didn't know that Vince was the owner. He was an announcer. And then once the word got out that he actually owns the company, he's the power behind the throne, this and that, Vince ran with it.
Mr. McMahon is one of the greatest heel characters of all time, yes.
I mean, you've heard arenas full of people chant, asshole, asshole.
If they had done it right, everybody prospered.
It's fun to chant.
Shawn Michaels
to be
became
fair.
the WWF champion off a big win. Vince McMahon became the catalyst to the evil empire of Mr. McMahon, and they handed the hottest wrestler in the world, Bret Hart, to WCW, and they dropped that ball.
In the aftermath of the Montreal Screwjob, wrestling changed forever. The fourth wall had fallen. Vince McMahon's villainous character would propel his company into the stratosphere, while Bret Hart would make his lackluster debut in WCW.
You know, if you look at how Bret Hart even came to WCW and how they launched me the very first day.
Why don't we bring the man out that's going to referee this match?
God, I remember, like, referee, it's so lame, like, such a lame way to bring me in.
Is that what you want? Referee?
Eric Bischoff was an imbecile trying to run wrestling. He didn't have any idea about how to run wrestling.
I have to take some responsibility in the fact that there may have been better ways to bring Bret in.
I would be honored to be the referee.
But at the same time, we'll never know that because the plans that we did have for Bret were executed so piss poorly because of his just detachment from it all.
He didn't get over in WCW. Zero impact.
Hey, Bischoff! In the WCW! I quit!
I think the legacy of the Montreal Screwjob is that nobody knows if it was really a screwjob or not. I happen to believe it was the real deal.
To me, I feel the same way now seeing it back as I did the first time I saw it. It's a total work. Everybody was in on it, and they all did it together. Now look at Bret's face. He doesn't look too shocked to me. You're going to spit on Vince, and then the truck is going to go tight on Vince, get Vince wiping the loogie out of his eye. Vince has been in the TV business his whole life. Nothing's going to happen without his consent. Everybody knows you're leaving. You're going to stand in what's now your opposition's ring on a global broadcast, and you're going to motion the call signs of your competitor. If that's not okayed by a big boss, in my mind, they're going to cut away from that. I mean, I've never discussed it with Shawn, and I wasn't there, and I didn't ask guys who were there. Watching it as an educated fan, I would say it was a complete collaboration by all parties. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah,
People do
I'll
say
check
it was a work, and Bret was in on it. No, man, this is the way this piece of history went down.
Conspiracy theorists will always be conspiracy theorists. But unfortunately, sometimes when people want more of a story to be there that just isn't there, they try to create it.
When we did an interview with Scott Hall, he believes that the Montreal Screwjob is this very scripted sort of thing.
He's not one of them too, is he? I'm sorry, it's ludicrous that Scott Hall would say that he didn't talk to Shawn Michaels about this. I know they all talk to each other about everything, but especially about this. Why the fuck wouldn't they? I will tell anybody to their face that thinks that this was a work, you are a dumb, stupid fucker. These are death threats. I've gotten a bunch of them. But these were some of the most creative and some of the most picturesque, so I framed these. Get by the ring one more time, you make a target under those lights, you won't know where it comes from. Bye-bye.
They pulled it all off because I trusted the referee. Poor Earl. He's just a little guy. I feel so bad for him. Like, to put that on him was such a rotten thing to do.
For the last 15 years, it's been the shits. That's always a chant in any arena as you screw Bret. We never talked for a long, long time, many years.
Shouldn't have screwed him.
Even though Bret and I are friends now, this is still upsetting. I guess you can kind of break it down a little bit, but it's something that will be with me forever.
A lot of people will say, hey, it was their idea, all the way from Vince Russo to Jim Cornette to Triple H to Shawn to me.
Where's the smoker?
We all said it.
The Montreal Screwjob is remembered all kinds of different ways by all kinds of different people. For the fans, it was like one of the first big behind-the-scenes things that exploded, and they heard about, and they realized that there was more intrigue in the locker room and in the boardroom than there sometimes was in the ring.
Forget an epic.
As soon as you start doing that, as soon as you don't believe it's real anymore, it's not really worth watching.
That's the way that people feel when they lose faith in their hero. That's when you lose people in wrestling. Because they believed in the people involved, even if they didn't always believe all the action, they believed in the people.
I take a lot of pride, almost ridiculous pride in being the wrestler that I was. I believe that I was the guy that reinforced wrestling aspect of the wrestling show. And that's what I like to be remembered for.
The reality of the situation is that if two guys just could have got over themselves, well, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
I mean, any final thoughts on, like, Jim?
I've ignored him for years, and it's on and on.
It's my personal enjoyment at this advanced age to remind everybody at every opportunity that he's a liar.
It's freaking wrestling. It means nothing.
I will live to piss on his grave. Even if I'm in a walker, my wife already has instructions. She's out of the will. If she doesn't get me there, if I'm not ambulatory, I'll find Vince Russo's grave and I will piss on it, and there will be a picture of that hanging on my wall when I pass away. And hate is a hell of a motivator.
Man. Jim Cornette. They filled time with that at the end there. But man, does he fucking hate Vince Russo. Shit stain Vince Russo. I mean, I guess y'all can guess which side of that beef I'm on. But yeah, that has been the series, y'all. A 96 to finish it off. A series that involved my first ever 100 on a series finale, which was awesome. Like a series finale in the game. Go back and watch the Luna Vachon episode if you haven't seen it. I pull off a 100 and I did not even realize I was booking my series finale pay-per-view. I don't know how it happened. I wouldn't believe it myself if I didn't already live it. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for tuning into the broadcast. And yeah, maybe next week, maybe a week after, we'll run some drug tests on everybody and have a fun episode like that. I don't really have any idea who's all gonna fail and who's gonna be left, so I don't have like a running idea of who's gonna be booked that episode, but we'll do something fun. Yeah, we'll have some fun with it. Let's get straight nutty. Actually, though, let's move one day ahead. I always like to show you guys the end of the month. We'll see what we made profit-wise. See what that's all about. Oh, half-year awards, too. That's right. That's a good timing. All right, cool. Digimoto. Woo! Company of the year so far. Look at us. We are moving around in the world. Match of the year, show of the year, volunteer slam. Okay. See, we got young wrestler, veteran wrestler, female wrestler, independent wrestler. Oh yeah, Rocky Johnson coming up with new catchphrases all the time with this guy. He's just a witty guy. Maybe he'll have a son someday. That'll also have some in-ring mic work skills. I mean, the world will never know. We'll just have to wait to figure it out. But yeah, we made $14.8 million last month. The wrestling business is good. Ever since we opened up our own broadcaster, we've been killing it. Just killing it. I don't know if that worked the same way for the WWE Network or not, but I'm pretty pleased with my results. Anyway, y'all, thank you again for checking out the series. Thank you again if you watch them all. You're in the elite class of individuals that have seen the entirety of this company's booking that I recorded, and that's special. Peace.